Hey there everybody, how's it going? So I am downtown Walla Walla, literally downtown, on the side of the street, on Colville Street. And Walla Walla's got this really cool, I think it's a river or, well, no, a creek that ran through downtown. And they obviously did a project here and concreted the whole thing. But I kind of think I saw an image, square, black and white, and 10-stop neutral density filter. So I'm gonna throw the camera up on a tripod and see if we can get that shot in the middle of the day. And so if it turns out any good, here it is. So I got this shot lined up here, and using the 31mm limited, which is a wonderful lens, and the Pentax K1 is so easy to use with the optical viewfinder and polarizers. I find the EVF can be a problem. So I'm getting f11 out of 50th of a second. This is a real straightforward shot, but I'm going to move in closer for some more close-up details. This was just like a record shot, but it's kind of interesting because of the clouds in the background in the sky. That's what. But now they've moved, so I'm going to get closer. So I'm back up here in what I like to call the Palouse South, which really is northeastern Oregon, but just this side of the border from Washington. And this band of land stretches up into the Palouse. And again, what's interesting about the Palouse and this area here, which is just south of Milton Freewater, is that they don't use any irrigation equipment to farm the land. And so it allows for interesting photography of a landscape, agricultural landscape without irrigation equipment in it. Really cool. And it's relatively close to where I live, relatively. And this is on the way home from Walla Walla, which is Walla Walla, Washington, which is a really neat little town with some really great restaurants. So now that I've got the DJI Pocket Osmo, I have less of a need for video in my photography cameras. And so I thought I'd break out the old K1 for a little jaunt. Always a pleasure. And the image quality really can't be beat. You know, I think I'm starting to hit curmudgeon levels because there's things that are bothering me about photography and about digital photography in particular. One of the things that I find really interesting, you know, I got on the digital bandwagon back when it was 6 megapixels with the Nikon D70, Canon 20D, etc. And back then we were always, you know, I was always wanting more image quality, better image quality. And, you know, then we got to 10 megapixels, the CCD on the D200, and 12 megapixels on the D300, Nikon D300. But from the 10 megapixel CCD to the 12 megapixel CMOS sensor on the D300, there really wasn't much of an increase in image quality, okay? I know it's only 10 to 12, But I think that extra 2 megapixels was kind of eaten up because the CMOS sensor isn't as sharp as the CCD sensor. And so then we got to 16 or 24 megapixels in APS-C, and things got better. Things got really sharp. And then we went mirrorless, and we added phase detection pixels onto the surface of the imaging sensor. And we got to 45 megapixels full frame, 40 megapixels APS-C with the Fuji, 45 megapixels with Nikon Z7, Canon R5, Sony 60 megapixels A7R5. But you know, I've shot, I haven't shot the Canon R5, but I've shot the Z7 II and I've shot the Sony A7R5. And honestly, I really think that the 36 megapixel sensor in the old Nikon D810 and the Pentax K1 Mark II is sharper. It renders a better image quality than the 45 megapixel or the 60 megapixel sensors in the newer mirrorless cameras. Now remember, the Pentax K1 does not have pixels on the imaging sensor dedicated to autofocus. I have no proof, I have no scientific evidence to support any of this. This is just a hunch. But it seems like things are getting a lot more automated and a lot more sophisticated and a lot more complicated, but they're not really getting any better. And that's the problem. I was taking some photographs today, just goofing around, because I was playing with the K1 because I got it out and wanted to familiarize myself with it because I haven't shot with it in a while. And I was taking some pictures of the cats. And yeah, the autofocus system is slow, and there's only like 30 points. And so what I did is I just put the 9 boxes in the middle, and I focused in, and the K1 focuses in very low light, no issues. And it's very accurate focus. Even with the screw drive limited lenses, which are gorgeous. But so I'd get the cat, I'd focus the boxes, a box would light up on the cat's face, recompose, click the shutter, bang, got the image, no nonsense. Okay, and in order to do that, I just pushed the button on the side, dialed in my 9 boxes, and then started taking photographs, okay? Then I took out the Fuji X-H2, and so the first thing I had to do was get the cat autofocus setting set. Then I had to get the wide area focus set. Then I had to get the continuous autofocus set. With the Pentax, I'd already taken 10 photographs. So with the Fuji, I was still setting crap, okay? And then, and it's not Fuji's fault. The Fuji's an awesome camera, and the autofocus for tracking and stuff like that, like, don't get me wrong, you know, but if you just want to take a photograph of your cat, which most people, that's what they want to do, Pentax is superior. It's faster, it's quicker, and it's much easier to use. Just saying. So, and also on the Pentax K1 and all the Pentaxes, if I want to turn on shake reduction or turn off shake reduction, it's like there's 2 different ways that I know how to do it right off the top of my head, and I haven't used this camera in 2 or 3 months. Number 1, I can use the top dial and dial in SR and turn it on and off. Or number 2, I can go to hit the info button and there's a tile that I can go down to turn SR, the shake reduction, on or off, okay? With the XH, as much as I've used that camera, I never dedicated one of the limited function buttons to shake reduction. So I never really know where it is, and it isn't. And I pushed a few buttons because I wanted to turn it on. I pushed a few buttons to try to find it, and it was like, nah, it's going to be a menu dive. I said, ah, screw it. It's not that important. I was just fooling around anyway, right? But the point being is that the more complex these systems get, the more difficult they are to implement or to use. And for me personally, I'm not seeing any real benefit or improvement for all these really sophisticated, complicated computer systems in my camera. The Pentax K1, now this is a Pentax K1 Mark II, which came out in 2018, but it's virtually the same camera as the Pentax K1, which came out in 2016. That's an 8-year-old camera already. And you know, maybe the one improvement I could make is add a joystick, maybe not, okay? On that note, Pentax says they're working on the K1 Mark III, which should be interesting, but, you know, the Pentax K1 and the K1 Mark II are still the old school Pentax mode of operation. When you got to the K3, there was more Ricoh DNA put into the K3 Mark III, okay? The K3 Mark III isn't as intuitive to use as the old school Pentax way of thinking, which was photographer first, automation second kind of a deal. The Pentax K1 is a photographer's camera. Mr. Ben said that, and I completely and totally agree with him. It really is a pleasure to use if you know what you're doing, and even if you don't, you know. It's not going to do it for you, though. If you take a great image with the Pentax K1, you had some input. Nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. The Pentax K3 Mark III, it's more of a Ricoh camera. It's more modern, and that's not necessarily a good thing, in my opinion, okay? I actually prefer the interface on the K1, except for the joystick, but be that as it may, well, there we are. And that's what I have to say about Pentax today. It's also a joy to use an SLR. I really like the optical viewfinder. I know, you know, that it's less convenient, but it's more satisfying, and it aids in creating better images, okay? All the automation in the electronic viewfinder and the electronic cameras and all the mirrorless cameras, I'm not 100% sure they're really contributing to better image quality. They contribute to more complication, and they're really impressive from a, you know, bragging rights standpoint, but as a photographer who wants to use the cameras to make art or to make images that express what I want to say in the images, I think the older cameras were, you know, I think we peaked. I actually think we're on the other side. That's something to think about. So not to mention, you're only as good as your lenses, and the Pentax limited lenses, the 31, the 43, the 77, are an absolute joy to use. And they always seem to make images that I really enjoy and I like looking at. So there is that. So I'm going to head up the road a bit and check out the view from the finished church. It's always fun to shoot that shot again because the light changes and the fields change and things like that. And you know, that's one of my big tips is keep going back to places where you know there's a shot that you like. Sooner or later you'll get it under the perfect conditions if you don't do it right from the get-go. Okay, hey, let's head on down the road. Okay, well, thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you out here. Have a great one. Bye.